He said, which is absolutely true. The president has to make the case. We saw that in the Gulf War. We saw it in a sort of in a different way in reverse in Vietnam. The president's got to make the case. But it's more difficult when the Congress comes out in advance and says you can't do it.
Tony?
You've got an unwinnable war here. There's this notion that somehow you can tie off the Serbs and everything, the Bosnian Serbs and everything will be okay. The fact is, the Bosnians, the Serbs, and the Croats all hate each other. And the idea that somehow a scrap of paper is going to lead to a durable peace is just crazy.
Excuse me, but what is the alternative? Nobody is trying to win a war. They're trying to put together a fragile peace. And,
yeah, but I'll tell you what the alternative is.
The alternative is to let it go on, and we keep watching those images. The leaders over there apparently are exhausted. They are willing to be caged up in an American Air Force base. They may actually come up with something. Well, let's give peace a chance to retrieve an old slogan from the 60s.
The tale of this war is that the leaders aren't in charge, and that's certainly been the case with the Bosnian Serbs. If a peace agreement's going to do it, good luck to them. What Americans don't want is their sons and daughters to be part of those pictures.
What about the instability deriving from Yeltsin's illness and Chernomyrdin's partial takeover of the government there? Chernomyrdin being somewhat more nationalistic than is Yeltsin, and therefore perhaps creating the impression, if not the reality, that the Russian soldiers will be more openly on the side of the Serbs. And what about the problems of that? What about the instability accruing from that, Ben?
You're creating, my name's not Ben, but...
It is when a president earns his paycheck, an American president. It is a tough one to handle.
You're setting up a lot of straw men to be knocked down, including the business about the mines. You know, there were a lot of mines in the Falklands also. They sent in flocks of sheep, and people maybe dined on mutton for a while. I mean, there are ways to deal with things like that.
There's a solution. A sheep drop.
Listen, John, Dr. Brzezinski made a point that Tony is sort of flamboyantly demagoguing with, which is this. You know, we now have a volunteer army. I mean, it's not politically correct to say these people are professionals. They volunteer to deal with these kind of situations. So to wave that bloody shirt and say, we can't send American boys and girls, shame on thou.
Wait a minute.
Shame on thou.
Let's get out. Will U.S. troops be sent to enforce a peace agreement in Bosnia? What do you think?
Jack's absolutely right. Not before the elections in 1996.
Eleanor?
I don't think they can keep them cooped up in Dayton that long. I think the chances are there will be troops, and it will be before the election.
Jack?
No, no, never.
Not before the election, or never. What do you think?
If there's a good agreement, a good, solid agreement, there will be American troops there.
What's the likelihood of that?
I don't know.
I don't think they'll go in before the elections. We'll be right back with us. Colin Powell causing the Republican Party to break apart into its worst schism since Goldwater in '64. President Bill Clinton may have stepped into yet another verbal gaffe. According to columnist Ben Wattenberg, President Clinton called him recently to praise Wattenberg's recent book, Values Matter Most, a book that is sometimes quite critical of Mr. Clinton. Wattenberg says Clinton said that in 1993 and 94, Clinton was, quote, too interested in the legislative scorecard rather than in philosophy, and that he was so anxious to fix the economy that he changed philosophically and missed the boat, unquote. Mr. Clinton went on to tell Wattenberg that after the 1994 Republican takeover, Clinton realized he, quote, created a cardboard cutout of himself. Clinton spokesman Mike McCurry dutifully backpedaled and faulted Wattenberg's recollection.
There are just some things that he does not, his recollection of the parts of the conversation are different from those as reported by Mr. Wattenberg. Specifically, he said that there's one direct quotation attributed to him about changing philosophically, and he does not recall that.
So, is the president developing a tropism for first, public confessions, and second, backpedaling on them? Recall that just 3 weeks ago, Mr. Clinton confessed that in 1993, he raised taxes too much.
Probably people in this room still mad at me at that budget because you think I raised your taxes too much. Well, it might surprise you to know that I think I raised them too much, too.
Then, a week later, Clinton backpedaled.
If I said anything which implies that I think that we didn't do what we should have done given the choices we faced at the time, I shouldn't have said that.
Also, Clinton recently told reporters on Air Force One that the nation was in a quote-unquote funk. 2 days later, McCurry backpedaled on the funk. Question, are these statements and retractions, are they gaffes or are they calculated political tactics? I ask you, Ben Wattenberg.
I don't know. I think some of it is just sort of press hype. If they put a wire on you and quoted everything you said and conflicts in what you said one month and another month, I don't want to, you know, stand up. I mean, the president's getting himself into a lot of trouble with this stuff. But this is the press has taken this thing. Look, the last election, the press and a lot of the president's people went around saying it's the economy, stupid. All right. Now he says to me, he's figured this out himself, that it's, he came up with a slogan called "Values Matter Most." Big difference, right? And he says, and then your book hit my desk and I started reading. The book is called "Values Matter Most." There is a substantive thing that he was chatting with me about. Now, I mean, I know what he said. I have notes on it. That's not the point. The point is that it's a serious, substantive understanding that he has of the political situation and life in America today, that that our major problems are not coming from the economy, but are coming from a corrosion of our values.
Our culture.
Yes, sir.
Jack, you know, we're in this situation. We don't want a president who's not a thoughtful person. On the other hand, we don't allow any president or political leader to ruminate in public. And that is what Clinton is a schmoozer. And he's always been like this from the beginning of his political career. He likes to talk out loud about things. What is the problem here is that this coincides with triangulation, this theory of Dick Morris, this political consultant, of him setting himself apart from the liberal Democratic core and the Republican Party as a third force in the campaign. And all of these things that he is saying seem to move him in the same direction, which is back toward the, away from the liberals. And that makes it look very contrived, even though I don't think it is.
Okay, hold on, Eleanor. I want to get this in. Ben, in your phone conversation with the president, you also criticized Clinton for his own original welfare plan, the one he submitted in '93 in the summer. You said it was too weak, and then the president agreed with you. He said, quote unquote, I wasn't pleased with that welfare plan I submitted either. The Washington Post editorialized about your conversation. This is what the Washington Post said. Now President Clinton has walked away from the welfare bill he sent to Congress last year. Just as the week before he renounced the tax increase he pushed to passage in 1993. What next? Perhaps he'll say he didn't mean to send up last year's health care reform proposals either. Mrs. Clinton made him do it. It becomes increasingly difficult to know what this president stands for or whether he stands for anything. Question, do you think the Post is being too stern with the president on the basis of your, what, 1 hour conversation with him?
Almost, yeah. No, I think that the whole press is playing gotcha with this thing. You said this, you said that, no, you said this. I mean, look, conditions change. Clinton has this unfortunate thing where he does, as Jack said, ruminate publicly.
Well, what is the who is the real Mr. Clinton?
Well, we are going to find out, John.
Listen, what he's doing, demonstrably what he's doing is cutting himself off from some of his past. Now, he did the same thing.
That is the way he ran in 1992, Jack. You know that. He ran. He said there's got to be a third way, that both parties, that liberals and conservatives, are brain dead. And that is a quote. He said that. That's when I began to like him.
Eleanor. He is regretting the fact that he left behind the themes of personal responsibility and the new covenant that he campaigned on.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't realize, however, how the impact of his words. I don't think this is a big strategy to go out there and position himself as a centrist.
He's done it before. I'll tell you when he did it. Let me tell you when he did it. He did it in 1981, and it's recounted rather brilliantly in Marinus's book. It was a form of an apology. He went to he didn't want to apologize, and he was talked into it by our friend Dick Morris. You remember that? And he gave an apology. Now he's using you And he's using other vehicles to apologize, so to speak, quote unquote, to confess that he was wrong. He wants to get distance between himself and is excessively.
This is Bill Clinton's personality. It's almost pathological. He's a work in progress. He's always defining and redefining himself. At least he doesn't talk to pictures like your president did.
Tony,
you guys have been entirely too nice. There's a difference between ruminations and schizophrenia. When you have a president who's for his tax increase and then against it, that is not the sign of a healthy personality.
Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
Yes, but a consistent inconsistency is also a hobgoblin of bad presidents.
Okay, not all of the news was bad for Clinton this week. His controversial backtracking, in fact, may even be working, boosting the president's standing in the polls. By contrast, Republicans are seeing public approval of their agenda slipping. By 64% to 26%, Americans now believe that the GOP will go too far and make changes that are bad for the country. But the president's good poll news may soon be eclipsed by the developing Whitewater hearings. This week, aides to Hillary Rodham Clinton stonewall senators on the bipartisan special committee investigating Whitewater and related matters. Senators were so unhappy with the testimony of Margaret Williams and Susan Thomas's that the First Lady herself was invited to testify, and the committee hinted that they may subpoena her if necessary. Question: was the week, this is an exit question, was the week a plus or a minus for Clinton, putting all the features together? Tony Snow.
Long-term minus, because I guarantee you a lot of stuff with the travel office and Whitewater are going to come back to haunt the president, and also especially his wife.
Eleanor.
I think it's a wash. He's continuing to make gains, and I don't think any of this noise of this week is going to undo that.
Don't forget, on the good side, he's got the good poll numbers. He's got the Dayton talks going. What do you think, Jack?
Minus.
Minus?
I think this whole picture of him as positioning himself all the time is bad.
What do you think, Ben? Plus or minus?
It's a Clinton week. It's a plinus or a muss. You know, it's somewhere in around there. I mean, I think that...
You think Clinton won the week over the Republicans?
Did I say that?
Yeah, I thought you said that. Did I hear that?
No,
it's a Republican week.
No, I said it was sort of a mix.
A draw? A draw?
I think if the president is seriously going back toward his new Democrat roots, it's a bumpy patch he's got to get over. It's difficult. People are going to say, yeah, but he ought to go there. It's good for the country. It's the only way he can get reelected, if he can get reelected.
I'll call it a draw, especially in view of the Dayton talks, which shows him as a trying peacemaker. Issue 3, Republicans in turmoil. Republicans are confused, they're troubled, and the reason is Colin Powell. A dozen conservative activists held a press conference Thursday declaring to be persona non grata. They threatened that grassroots conservatives will abandon the Republican Party if Powell is the nominee. Until he makes up his mind whether to run or not to run, the candidates are all frozen in their tracks, and their fundraising is frozen too. If Powell does run in the Republican primaries, the party could be convulsed in a way that hasn't been seen since Goldwater in '64.
The Republican Party, Cokie, is a right-to-life party. It's a Second Amendment party. It believes in equal justice under law, but special privilege for none, not affirmative action. General Powell disagrees with us profoundly on all those issues. He is a Bill Clintonite on those issues.
The problem is, and what I've said, is that conservatives have no reason to support a Powell candidacy because Powell represents a worldview that is shared by a small segment of the party and which is antithetical to the direction the party has been going in so successfully for the last few years.
In other words, Powell is out of touch, they say, with the right wing of the party that produced the '94 Republican takeover of Congress and the Gingrich Revolution. But the chairman of the Republican Party, Haley Barbour, and Bill Bennett, one of the party's key theoreticians, both favor Powell.
If Colin Powell runs for president, not only is he welcome to run as a Republican, I hope he runs as a Republican. If he wants to run for president, I hope it will be in the Republican primary. He's more than welcome. But I think he's very much in the mainstream of the Republican Party.
This man is a hero. He's extremely well respected by the American people. Of course we want him in our party.
In a head-to-head contest, Powell, as the Republican nominee, trounces Democrat Bill Clinton 49% to 34%, whereas Bob Dole, as the Republican nominee, loses to Clinton 39% to 46%. Question: Assume that Powell runs in the Republican primary, wins the nomination, and wins the presidency. Is that good news or bad news for the GOP congressional majority? I ask you.
Gigantically good news. If Powell wins the nomination, it means that he's run as a conservative, and he's managed to bring liberal and conservatives together in the same tent. He brings black voters into the fold. If Powell were to do that, if he were to run as a conservative Republican, I'm talking about limited government, lower taxes, deregulation, and so on, kind of a libertarian Republican.
Devolution of power back to the states.
Exactly.
Then what?
If he does that, you're going to have more than 300 seats in the House, close to 70 in the Senate. You'll have a landslide.
What do you think?
Those are too many ifs. This is bad news.
Good news or bad?
It's bad news for the Republican Shiites, the ones the rabid types in Congress. It's great news for the Connie Morella, John Chafee moderate wing of the party. They'll grow, blossom.
Good news or bad news, collectively speaking, for good news?
Good news. Winning is always better than losing.
No question about it.
No
what do you say? Good news or bad?
No, it's great news for the Republican Party. The problem is that the conservatives, in trying to read Powell out of the party, may be reading themselves out of the party. You know, it's like that thing from the Wizard of Oz, where they finally take the screen away and say, hey, the Republican Party's not a right-wing party. Surprise.
Answer good news. We'll be right back with predictions.
Opinion